Another Tuesday, another edition of the Fan Offseason Special. Back with you guys. We are every single Tuesday getting you ready for the draft, catching up on the league meetings happening over the weekend. It is myself, Jake Volnick, Lance Risland, and of course, Daryl Ryder, brought to you courtesy of Scheiben Jewelers, Cleveland's premier jewelry store. A lot to get into, a lot that I took my vacation and also spent half my time on social media catching up with. Miles is or isn't getting traded. We're talking about quarterbacks. Too many nice words on Deshaun and the nice words on Shedeur. I still have no clue, but we're back, and I didn't really get any sort of break, but it was nice to sit in the mountains for a couple days. How are we doing, guys?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we have a lot to cover. A lot was said by both Andrew Berry and Todd Monken, but also Brown's ownership. Some things I did not expect to hear. Maybe I will admit that I was hoping to not hear, but here we are. It's going to be a reality, and we're going to get into it all. Buckle up. Shedeur v. Deshaun, here we go.
Well, the thing is, I like the idea of what they've said. I know a lot of people have gotten a lot of pushback, and I understand that as well. You know, there's some shrapnel that has happened over the last couple of years, but that's not what Monken's thinking. So I think it's a good thing in terms of they're trying to win now. And everything that I hear week after week, and you listen to everybody, is we got to build towards the future. If I'm a football coach and I'm 6 years old, I got to win right now. And it doesn't mean that you necessarily are going to see Shedeur or you're going to see Deshaun. It just means hopefully they're competing, and hopefully they're both ready to play. That's the way I see it. I didn't see it as a negative, but some people do, and I understand that as well.
So let's sort of start with the Jimmy Haslam comments that were out there. Obviously, the only ones that we don't have like a recorded record of, but that were very well circulated. I think this was the only time I actually took a break. Like, I usually go on vacation. I'm like, I'll open social media, but I'm not going to post on social media. That's way too much work. The one thing I ended up posting was the Jimmy Haslam comments off of Deshaun, with just a simple of like, I'm sure my timeline, the rest of it here is going to be nice and calm and collected after seeing this at the very top. And lo and behold, I was correct. It was anything but calm and collected. Everybody had their reactions based on the comments that went along the lines of, hey, just because I said swing and a miss last year doesn't mean that this year it can't be a home run. I think I start with like where the right place to weigh with how much weight you actually put into comments like that. Because innately, it obviously it explains to you exactly what we were thinking, that Deshaun's going to be in the competition. We've been told this multiple times, that he's going to have the opportunity to go fight for the starting job. That part's not news to you, but the way that I saw so many people take it was like, this means Deshaun Watson's going to be the week one starter, which I understand the reaction based off it, especially when it's coming,
right
out of ownership's mouth, but that's also not exactly directly what was said either. It was, hey, I called it a swing and a miss, but that doesn't mean it can't be a home run. AK doesn't mean he can't come out, win the starting quarterback battle, and then go have a really good season. Now, I don't know that I think he can have a really good season, but I understand that the Browns clearly are in that thought, and that's really all I took away from it.
I live in this little bubble I like to call reality, and I understand how it can come off as me throwing shade at Deshaun or hating on Deshaun. And I'm just here to tell you, from a football standpoint, I just don't think it's realistic to have much in the way of expectations of what Deshaun's going to be able to give you this fall, and it's why I just would rather see Shedeur Sanders. This is a guy who's only played 19 games since the 2020 season. That includes 2 full years off. One was a sit-out when his final year in Houston in 2021. Last year out with the multiple ruptured same Achilles injury, right? And so the times that he was on the field for the Browns, which have been few and far between, whether it was coming off of the sit-out plus suspension a year and a half, whether it is coming off the shoulder injury, to now with the Achilles, like, I have no doubt Deshaun is going to look great in practice, okay? There's no contact. There's no fear of contact and whatnot. But what we have seen from him is once he gets out on the field against the opposition, where he is a target, it's not gone well. And that includes the practices, I should say, against the Minnesota Vikings. Now, we're going to get, for me, the real judgment of Deshaun begins when the Buffalo Bills will come to town for the joint practices, because he's going to be going against another team that they're going to be working on their own stuff and whatnot. That's when the judgment for me is going to begin, not during the mini camps or the OTAs. It's going to be when the joint practices start, and obviously the preseason, because, again, it's been rough watching this guy after these long layoffs. But I have no doubt if he's healthy, he'll win the starting job from Shedeur, because he's the one that has the experience, and I expect that to pay off. But I also expect that that's not going to bear fruit come the regular season. I think they got a better shot to win with Shedeur. That's just my take on it.
Well, I would say this, and I've had people say, winning less with, Shedeur is better than winning more with Deshaun. And I just have to disagree. And the reason I like what has been said about Deshaun Watson is that everything that's happened in the past that absolutely means nothing. And that's a good thing. And that's good for everybody. Again, this is a ripple effect of what happened when you get rid of your head coach. But for me, when people say he's going to look good in practice and he'll look better than Shedeur, then that's a problem for Shedeur, because you're right, Daryl. They're not getting hit. They have red shirts on. They're not getting touched. So that's the opportunity where Shedeur's got to look better, because there is no live bullets, and that's an issue. So for me, I've looked at this as more of a positive, even though people have pushed back. This is, if he's the best guy, I'm not looking to develop. I'm not looking to do all these things. I'm looking to win week one. And if Deshaun Watson gives me the best chance to win week one, then I'm going with Deshaun Watson. And I like Shedeur, and I like Dylan, and I don't really care who the quarterback is. But for me, it's not and all the shrapnel and everything that's happened, that's all real with Deshaun. Doesn't matter if he gets healthy. If he gets healthy, he wins the job. If there is a true competition, I don't, how they do these things. We'll see. I'm looking forward to see how Todd Monken runs his practice.
By the way, Coach, I think Deshaun is healthy.
Okay.
Like, I don't think that's in question here. Mm-hmm. I think he's healthy now, and from the start of everything, which is a good thing. Well,
like I said,
that positions him to put his best foot forward, right? Mm-hmm. I do feel that's just my take on it. Watching the Instagram videos that he puts out on social media, and that, like, he looks healthy to me, but we'll see. We'll see how that translates.
So for me, I think everybody's kind of right on what they're thinking about if he should play, the future, all that. But as a football coach, I want to win right now. And what do I have to do to win right now? And I think if he gives you the best shot now, if he is healthy and Shedeur beats him, that's a great thing for Shedeur. Once again, I look at more of what do the Browns have to do, because whoever's been in at quarterback, they haven't won very much. So now Todd Monken, the big thing for me is that when they said QB competition last year, first of all, I don't care if there's just two QBs. It's really hard to measure quarterbacks sometimes the way Kevin Stefanski ran his practice. Lots of guys run it like that, so it's not wrong. But if you don't have more live bullets, if you don't have live action, it's tough to evaluate, especially the quarterback. It doesn't mean he has to be live, but is everybody else a little bit more live around? So, again, I think it's a good thing. I think it's a positive thing, because they're not set into what they're doing. And hopefully Todd Monken is, like, not caring what is being said. I hate to say that, but, like, I'm playing the best guy. That's what I want to see from him.
See, because I'm in an interesting spot, because there's part of me that does think, okay, what does Deshaun look like right now? Like, I'm interested to see it in some ways, because not only are you coming off of two injuries where you expect the rust, and we've seen what we've seen on the field over the past few years, but we're also talking about an offense that was never really designed for him. They brought in Ken Dorsey and tried to mix the two offenses, but when we compare it to the Bill O'Brien Houston offense, I mean, they're irrecognizable to each other. That was an offense that was set up for Deshaun to succeed. This was an offense that was somewhat adapted for him to hopefully succeed, but not set up for him to really go. Where we talk about Todd Monken, he's going to set up your best guys to go forward. And if one of those guys is Deshaun, you expect the offense to be set up pretty well in an area for Deshaun to succeed. So there is part of me of going, okay, I know he didn't look good on the field, but if he's put into a spot where he's comfortable, right, we know what the ceiling ends up being, or what, closer to the ceiling we can get to. I guess more of the problem I have is with Jimmy's individual comment of the swing and a miss can turn into a home run. Because I think home run is far gone at this point. Like, Deshaun could come light the world on fire. One, the contract is still a swing and a miss, because you got one good year out of your quarterback that you paid $230 million. Two,
that's assuming you get a good year,
right?
By the way, that's a big assumption on your part. Nothing personal. No, that's a pretty big assumption on your end.
It's a massive assumption. That's the thing.
But it could happen.
But I think we are.
But it's an assumption, but it could happen.
We are in, like,
I could win the lottery.
If I'm generous, 5% possibility, and I think it's lower than that, but 5% possibility that Deshaun returns to Houston, Deshaun, and plays at the $230 million level.
Where they go 4-12, but he leads the NFL in passing yards? Oh, I'm sorry, my bad.
I more so probably meant like the years prior when he was making the playoffs and actually pushed the Browns.
I couldn't resist, okay?
It was on the table. It was there. But like, even if he got to that level and led the Browns to the playoffs, anything short of like you knocked out of the park and looked like a top 5 quarterback still leaves you in a terrible position organizationally moving forward, because now you're right back in a much more convoluted Baker Mayfield situation of, okay, the guy's good, but is he good enough to get me over the hump? Am I trusting what I've seen for one season, or am I trusting what I've seen out of Deshaun for the previous 6? And that's not a head coach evaluation. Todd Monken goes, that guy's great.
Well, it's an availability issue. Like that, to me, that's what it comes down to. It's not just the injuries that he has suffered. It's an availability issue, okay? The human body can only take so much. Like, again, I am trying to look at this situation through a very practical and realistic lens. I understand what you're saying, Jake, Coach. I understand what you're saying. I just don't want to sit here and get people hyped up with these lofty expectations that, okay, because Deshaun's healthy, he's going to look like the dude from 6 years ago, or the dude that walked onto the practice field in 2022 with the Browns during the offseason program as he was going through all of his off-the-field issues. And, you know, I'll be honest with you, that those practices, that was some of the best quarterbacking I had ever seen in a Browns practice, okay? I'll acknowledge that. But then he started to not become available. The 11-game suspension comes back, rusty, right? We're making excuses. Well, he hadn't played a year and a half. What do you expect? He's a little rusty. Got to take some time to get the old game thing going again, right? And then, off the shoulder injury, same thing, right? Oh, looks a little rusty. You got to need some time to get back healthy again. And now the ruptured, Achilles, and not once but twice. So physically, I think right now as I said, I think he's healthy, and he would be cleared to play by the medicals right now. Okay, I just have no expectation that he is going to have the feel for the game that is required for him to play at that elite level that pays him $46 million a year. So what got my attention wasn't the Haslam comment. Mm-hmm. It was the Andrew Berry pondering, well, we'll see what happens, but yeah, maybe we do extend Deshaun. That's when I had the heart attack. Not because Jimmy Haslam talked about, I could go from a swing and a miss to a home run. That's Jimmy Haslam. Okay, Jimmy Haslam's very good in front of the cameras and the microphones, and I know he said, well, I could have articulated that better last year and all that. No, he's very good dealing with the media. He's very quotable. He says what's on his mind. He speaks with passion and energy and all that, okay? I believe him when he says we're frustrated, we want to get this right, yada, 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 right? My issue is they just don't know how to get there. Like, I have no doubt that they want to win, okay? They spend like it. They spend over $300. They're the top spending franchise in the National Football League each of the last 3 years. They should get a trophy for that, okay? And they have nothing to show for that. So that's where I got nervous, where Andrew Berry's like, well, we'll see how it goes, but, there is a world maybe where we do extend Deshaun. Yikes! But you know what? That means that he played 17 games. He played at the Houston Texans level, that all-pro level, right? A lot of passing yards, a lot of touchdowns, not a lot of interceptions, not a lot of sacks, or negative plays, right? But for me, I just think right now it's totally premature to even not reminisce, but contemplate that particular world. For me, a lot has to happen before I can get there romancing the greatness of Deshaun Watson on a football field right now.
Yeah, I live in that tunnel. That's funny you say that. I live in that tunnel where I say, I think Deshaun Watson can be really good again. I think Shedeur Sanders is going to continue to get better. I think Dylan Gabriel in the right spot can help and be a player in this league. That's okay if they're not, but I think as coaches, and once again, it's always good to have different, views of it, but I'm hoping Todd Monken has this view where I'm going to get everybody better. I'm going to get everybody to their peak, and then we'll decide. And that would be, as a coach, that's what I'm hoping they do. So I don't really necessarily, the reality part of it, I kind of live on the edge of that because I say to myself, I'm not disappointed if Deshaun doesn't do it. I think he can. And if he doesn't, okay. But I think when you have that belief that the attention to detail in practice, how you plan, how you take care of your body, how you eat, every little thing matters because you think you're the guy and your coach thinks you're the guy. I don't know. There's something to be said about that. What everybody's saying is very, very true. But I think with all these guys, I think in that lane of I'm going to get the max out of all these guys, and then we'll see who's going to play.
I think the big thing for me is you're going into this year. We ended last year, at least, thinking we were heading into this year with let's put Shedeur in a quarterback competition. If he goes and wins that out, then he shows you he can be the guy or he can't be the guy on the field.
Right.
I think right from week one, if you can't beat out Deshaun Watson, probably have your answer there anyway, is that Shedeur probably wasn't going to be the guy. And you're going to be turning to an alternative method, probably the 2027 draft at some point either way. But I want to continue this conversation going because it wasn't just Jimmy Haslam. It wasn't just Andrew Berry. Todd Monken put some interesting conversations that they didn't contradict what the other two guys said, but it certainly was maybe push forward a little bit more on, Shedeur is in this competition and this thing is far from decided. We're going to get into that coming up in 5 minutes. It's Jake Volnick, Lance Rise, and Darrell Whiter all with you guys right here on the Fan Offseason Special.
Oak Grove Speed Test Intelligence Data 2H 2025. All rights reserved.
The fight for playoff positioning is on in the Eastern Conference as Donovan Mitchell, James Harden, and the Cavs look to get real healthy for a postseason run. We are your home for the best Cavs talk in Cleveland. 92.3 The Fan. Catch all the latest Browns and NFL news and conversations right here. It's the Fan Offseason Special. Here are your hosts, Jake Volnick, Darrow Ryder, and Coach Lance Reisland. We are Sports Radio 92.3 The Fan.
Back here on the Fan Offseason Special, myself, Jake Volnick, Lance Reisland, and Darrow Ryder with you guys here through 9 o'clock, getting you all caught up on everything that happened this weekend with the Browns. It's a nice little break from a lot of the draft focus, which of course we're still going to have. We're going to get coaches' breakdowns on both corners and interior offensive linemen today. But it's a nice little break if we get maybe not the desired conversation for a lot of people, but it's a different conversation than do the Browns pick at 6? Do they trade down? Who do they pick at 6? All of those funds. But obviously, we're having the conversation about Deshaun right now, and we reacted to some of Andrew Berry's comments, some of Jimmy Haslam's comments on the entire situation with Deshaun's possibility to play. Obviously, today we also hear from Todd Monken, and I think there were some really interesting things that got thrown out there that didn't necessarily directly align with the strong push for Deshaun, right? Because I think that I would have looked at Berry and I would have looked at Jimmy Haslam's comments and I would have said, if anything came out of the quarterback spot, it's that maybe Deshaun has a higher ranking than where the fans saw him at. But Todd Monken came in and talked about, hey, what's that kind of offseason program going to look at when these two guys get to throw? And he explained it as about clearly as you could imagine.
I wouldn't say they're going to be evenly dispersed, but we'll definitely disperse them to give ourselves a chance to at least evaluate who we have on the roster, whoever that might be. What we've seen in the past and where the year ended last year.
So does that mean Shore gets the ball for the reps?
I'm not ready to say that yet. I just said the reps can't be divided up evenly. There's no chance it can be divided up evenly, at least on a daily basis.
So obviously, I
feel like I'm standing on the tracks looking down and I see that light getting closer. Listening to Todd, like Todd is truth serum, okay? Mm-hmm. I think that's one of his greatest strengths is he tells you what's on his mind, but it also might be his Achilles heel as well. And just like listening to that, yeah, I'm just thinking this isn't going to end well for anybody.
Well, you know what I say? I look at it a little differently because I think what he's trying to say, first of all, is that I agree with, Deshaun is better than fans think he is, but don't forget about Shedeur. Mm-hmm. Don't forget about anybody. Now, when he says the reps aren't going to be split equally, that doesn't mean they're not going to be fair. First of all, no one cares in football if it's fair, but that means they're getting quality reps against multiple looks, multiple fronts, multiple blitzes, multiple coverages, as live as that can be. And that would be obviously in the Buffalo joint practice, but what he's saying right there, I know there's a lot of cliche in what he says right there, but again, as a fan of football, I look at it and say, if it's true and everybody's kind of starting with it, it's not, everybody says fresh eyes. It's not fresh eyes. This is just a new start, and everybody's kind of on the same boat, and everybody's on the same plane, and that's the reality of it, and for good and for bad.
Well, I will say that I think we can eliminate one guy.
You don't think Dylan's getting that?
I don't agree because
I don't think that they're all that worried about giving Dylan Gabriel reps right now.
Well, all the things that happened with Shedeur, though, are the same things that happened to Dylan. Now, Shedeur was very impactful when he got there, and I have no doubt saying that. But the idea of with a new coach maximizing what he can do, I've watched a lot of film on Dylan Gabriel. He was not as bad as he played sometimes last year, and that's the reality of it. Same with it can be said about Shedeur Sanders when they talked about his bad habits. Those are some of the things he had to do to be successful at Colorado. I don't know. I would like to see a fresh slate for not only Shedeur and Deshaun, but that includes Dylan Gabriel too. If it's a backup, it's a backup, whatever it is. But I think he can be successful in the right scheme with people around him. Now he's got to have good pieces. There's no doubt. But I'm not selling him short either.
See, I thought it was interesting because he mentions, kind of the way last year ended having an impact on the quarterback battle. And I mean, at some point, when you walk in, like when you're a new coach, I have to imagine part of your evaluation of what you have as a team is also going back and looking at least how the season ended. And you went, okay, well, your starting quarterback at the end of last year was Shedeur. We got to see what we saw out of him. We didn't get to see Deshaun. Like, if I'm opening up camp it's not Shador's job to lose, but you were the starter last year. Like, you were the guy who was in place. Deshaun was not healthy last year and is going to have to come back and kind of prove that. So, hey, starting day one, this team's going to pick up where they left off, because that's where we're at in the quarterback competition. Is day one, maybe Shador's getting more first-team reps than Shador's getting more first-team reps than Deshaun is. But that's not to say that day two, we don't toss then unequal reps where Deshaun's more at the first team, Shador's more at the second team. We're mixing these guys up. We're seeing how they look against, different levels of the defense, the first team for the second team, whether it be the third team. Maybe they drop one of those guys down to say, hey, you have a lot less talent. What do you look like against even the less talented defense? In things that you do well from that you don't do at the second team. Just to kind of mix things up, but hey, it's not necessarily going to be equal. If I'm giving more reps to Shador and he wins over Deshaun day after day after day, why am I splitting the reps evenly, right? Like, if he never looks worse than Deshaun, why am I giving more reps to Deshaun to see if he can prove that he's a starter? It's on almost an earn it basis. Everybody goes out there and has a chance to earn it, but if you're looking better against the first team than Deshaun is against the second team, I don't know that I should be. I'll test Deshaun with the first team, but I'm not just going to throw him the bulk of reps every single day too.
I just find it interesting that the Browns are making it known to everybody that the possibility of Deshaun starting week one is legit. It's not for show. It's all the insiders are talking about it now, and I'm concerned by that. Also, too, though, I don't know how you can run a fair quarterback competition without dividing the reps equally, without putting guys in identical situations to see which one performs better in that situation. So I would probably push back a little bit on Todd on that. Like, how are you going to run a fair quarterback competition if you're not evaluating Deshaun and Shador in the same drills, in the same situations, right? To see the differences in performance, assuming that there will be differences in performance, right?
Right.
When you go back in the film room and you're watching practice, right, where you can compare and contrast. Hey, here's how Deshaun looked in the 2-minute drill red zone offense. Here's how Shador looked in the 2-minute drill red zone offense, or whatever it is, right? Backed up on your goal line. 4-minute offense, 5-minute offense, whatever it is that you're running, right? I would think that as a coach, and I'll leave this to Coach Riz to talk about, but if I were a coach, I would want, if it's a true quarterback competition, mano-a-mano, I would want identical film, situational film on both guys to help me pick the best player.
Well, the thing, that's the way you should do it. That's really hard to do, though, because you're always going to get different looks from a defense. So that becomes scripted, and it's really, really hard. The thing that I will say that we won't know is that it's a new offense. So with new offense comes new terminology. How does a quarterback kind of lead into the season before he starts to practice? Well, being a new offense, there's a couple ways. One is terminology. Does he understand the terminology? Does he understand fronts, coverages, and blitzes? Does he understand how to get in and out of a good run play going left or right? When they kill it, is it kill it to the right or left, or is it an entirely new play? How quickly can they pick that up? How quickly can they get in and out of the huddle? How much do they understand as they're putting in this new offense? You're always sitting in a quarterback room, and I remember like being in a quarterback room where I was a younger guy, and there was a guy who was older, and he just kind of knew fronts and coverages and blitzes. And that kind of gives you an advantage when you're into practice because you can practice a lot faster than the guy who's kind of still learning it. So, how fast do they pick up all that stuff during the offseason with the new playbook? That will tie into it too, because Todd Monken's offense, remember, it's week to week. When they faced the Browns, they knew they were getting pressure. When they faced the Ravens, they knew they were getting more play on the line of scrimmage. So he does different things. So that quarterback's got to really be knowledgeable. That will tie into this as well. Not just the throws, which will be the primary, but can you get your guys in and out of the right play every single down?
Coach, a question I would have on this is kind of how much of that, like, obviously, Daryl, both of you guys are going to be out there sitting at training camp watching all of this unfold. We're going to be able to see with our own two eyes, oh, this guy looks better, that guy looks better. How much of that is actually determined then behind the scenes? It's like, you have leadership qualities. You have how guys respond to each other in the locker room. You have all of the inner workings of the team that you're not necessarily going to see play out onto the field that also can give a guy an edge. Hey, we want to go to war with Shador Sanders, and maybe the guys are standoffish from Deshaun, even if he is it would have to be relatively close play. But if he's slightly outperforming Deshaun, but all the guys gravitate to Shedeur, think he has a step up in it, or vice versa, how much of that plays into the competition?
Well, go ahead.
I think it has to, and I will tell you right now, Shedeur has a better chance of winning in the locker room than Deshaun does.
Yep.
Well, I think
because even when real quick, because just my observations, like I go back to like when Joe Flacco. I hate going back to 2023, but like nobody gravitated to Deshaun's locker at any point in time in his time here. Okay, like. No one's congregating around his locker. Nobody wanted to hang out with him. Now, I will acknowledge that's in public, in front of the media, etc. That said, everybody wanted to congregate and hang out with Joe Flacco in front of the media. You know what I'm saying? Like people wanted to hang out with Shedeur in front of the media, like and stuff like that. So if that is a metric, Shedeur's going to run away with that.
Well, I think I'll give you an example of what I think Shedeur did very well last year. His numbers weren't as good as Dylan on paper, but you could feel the impact when, as somebody who likes Dylan Gabriel, when he didn't play well, you felt the team when he came in. There's that it factor. He had it when they came in. You look at Sampson, like it wasn't a great throw, it was a swing pass, but he put it where he could catch it and run with it. A guy like Sampson, that's my ultimate kind of like measuring stick. He was a different player when Shedeur played. He had, and that's the impact, right? That's that leadership. That's that, like, this guy has, the juice. He's there every day. And a lot of that,
raising the level of play of those around you.
Sure, and that's a big thing. And even if you look at the numbers, that doesn't tell the whole story when he got there. Sure, he had 10 interceptions, his incompletions, all that kind of good stuff. He had really good impact, I thought. And there's something you can kind of build on from there. Obviously that's what Dylan would have to do more than anything else. He's got to be impactful. That he had no impact when he played. Shedeur did, and you saw it with his teammates. And if that's the case, and once again, it will all come down to who's going to help him win games. Because in the end, if you win games, you got a chance.
I'll say this: I felt like that they believed in Shedeur more than they believed in Dylan, and I got to be honest with you, I don't think they ever believed in Dylan. I really don't, and that may have contributed to the poor outcome. Yeah. From Dylan being on the field. Like, I don't think they ever believed in Dylan Gabriel. But with Shedeur, just the long completion to Isaiah Bond against the Raiders in Vegas, right? You saw they cut to the sideline at Myles Garrett, and Myles is like, whoa, what the just happened? I'm not used to seeing quarterback play like that. Here, that is, you see what I'm saying? So, like, I feel like when you're talking about the intangible of whether it's leadership, belief in the quarterback, gravitating toward the quarterback, rallying behind the quarterback, however you want to lay that out, right? Shedeur Sanders is going to win that in a landslide.
Well, you think about what people are saying about him being in the building and Deshaun. That's all optics. That really, really means nothing. But it kind of does in terms of, like, how people view it.
You know what? I think it means something to Todd Monken.
And perception is reality. So so the idea that Deshaun's not working hard or Dylan's not working hard, that's not true. But him being here is a good thing. And that's, as a quarterback, it's the hardest position in sports, right? And that's why, because a lot of times it's just getting people on board with you. And he does a really nice job of that. So, I would say he has the advantage if it comes down to that.
We'll see how much that plays into it. We're going to take a break from talking quarterbacks. We got Myles Garrett and some Andrew Berry comments from over the weekend to talk about coming up at 8. But first, we're going to get to Coach's breakdown of the cornerbacks in this upcoming draft in 2026 coming your way in 5 minutes. It's the Fan Offseason Special. Jake Volnick, Lance Rise, and Darryl Ryder, all with you guys right here on The Fan.
92.3 The Fan has the most local sports talk in town, and you can be a part of it.
Sign up to be a part of the Fan Club. Download the free Odyssey app and follow 92.3 The Fan to get all of the best audio and best stories sent straight to your inbox. 92.3thefan.com. Catch all the latest Browns and NFL news and conversations right here. It's the Fan Offseason Special. Here are your hosts, Jake Volnick, Darrow Ryder, and Coach Lance Reisland. We are Sports Radio 92.3 The Fan.
Back here on the Fan Offseason Special. Plenty to get into. Myles Garrett conversations. If they weren't swirling before, they're sure as hell swirling now. We love the league meetings. They give us so much information to talk about, and basically all speculation. We're going to get into that coming up at 8 o'clock. Some really good stuff, some very pressing things to react to on the Myles front. But before we do have a draft coming up. I so badly want to say the end of the month. We're a day away from the end of April. And we got to get some breakdowns going. We have to get further into our position groups. We start today by taking a little bit of a deeper look into this quarterback class. And, of course, Coach Riz has his full breakdowns done from every position group. So we go to him. Coach, we'll sort of start with the cornerback spot. And I want to start with a Browns evaluation of it, kind of. Obviously, this is a defense that has played really well. You've been bolstered by a guy like Denzel Ward for a really long time. You add a guy last year like Tyson Campbell, who you put him in a man defense, played incredible. And then still, like when guys had to step in, it wasn't the end of the world. This defense played really well in the secondary. How much of a need is there right now for the Browns at corner?
Well, I think Martin Emerson is a big question mark. And, I've talked about moving Martin Emerson inside. So many teams are going to 12 personnel. Now, I don't want to see Martin Emerson play a little slot guy, but he's a big physical guy. And if teams are going to play two tight ends, he's a guy who can play inside that nickel, kind of rotate inside and out. Obviously, Tyson Campbell is a man guy. Ward's a man guy. I think the real need is still, even though Hickman played well, maybe the free safety, but they do need some depth. They need some depth for what they do when they play more man, as much man as anybody in football. And that's a mentality as much as it is skill set. You got to know that you're going to get beat once in a while. You got to know that you're on an island. And you got to be, the thing I love about Martin Emerson is he's a high-level competitor. Denzel Ward is a high-level competitor in practice. And there's some corners out there that kind of fit that.
Okay, so obviously we take a look at that. And the other side of this when we talk about man is obviously you change your defensive coordinator. Mike Rutenberg comes in. There's been the speculation this defense, Todd Monken said it, we're not going to change this up a little bit. Do you see that still being the Mike Rutenberg staple? He comes in and this defense is still in their classic personnel playing a ton of man.
Well, the thing that's different, I will say this. When the ball is snapped, there'll be a lot of man coverage with one high hat. Mm-hmm. The thing that Rutenberg's going to change in this, it's not going to be the front. It's not going to be the linebacker depth. What your people are going to see is pre-snap disguise, right? The idea of playing two high hats, but most of the time it's going to be one high hat. But they're going to do a bunch of different things. They're going to play robber. They're going to play cover three. But majority, they're going to end up in that man coverage. So even though the window dressing kind of leads you elsewhere, they're going to be in man. And what that does, though, is it hides where blitzes come from a little bit when you rotate and things like that. So that's what Rutenberg's going to do. But this is going to be still a predominant man team. They're going to bring pressure. They're going to try to dictate what the offense does.
All right, so you look at this class then. Who are the guys that you like just in general from this class at the corner spot?
Well, Mansour Delaney's a guy, if they would have to, it would be a first-round guy. They're going to have to go, and I don't think that's where the Browns would go, but I have him as my number one corner. My number two corner is a little bit different than most. A kid named Chris Johnson out of San Diego State. I think he's a little better zone, but he's really good man. He's just a really good football player. I also think he can play inside really well. There's two guys that I think absolutely match the Browns, and they'll be available on days 2 and 3. Colton Hood is a kid out of Tennessee. He's 5'11", he's 193, very, very physical. And at Tennessee, they play a lot of man coverage. So that would be kind of an easy transition for him. Big physical kid, really good at the catch point. But you can see when he plays, he has that like nasty Martin Emerson kind of demeanor. And then I think the top guy for the Browns is a kid named Avion Terrell from Clemson. Kid is 5'10", almost 5'11". Again, this is a highly twitchy athlete in space, can play the nickel corner if you get a twitchy slot, can play outside. He's a guy that can play on the half if you had to do those things. Avion Terrell, I think, is the best fit for the Browns on day 2. Then you have guys like Thaddeus Gibson out of Dixon out of North Carolina, 6'1", 195, kind of gives you a Martin Emerson vibe. A little bit handsy at the top routes, but he's a guy who's highly competitive. Igman Nosen, the kid from Ohio State, he's a guy who's very physical. The thing about Igman Nosen, he's 6'2". So he's a big physical corner. If Martin Emerson's not a guy that can play outside anymore, you're going to have to get that big physical corner for T. Higgins and these guys who use length. So Igmanosin might be a guy that can do that. Brandon Sissy, the kid out of South Carolina, is probably the fastest corner in the draft. But not only fast, like 40 fast, but football fast. And for me, that tells you he not only understands the game, he understands what coverage is, he understands leverage, blind spots, where to put his feet, how to move his feet. Extremely explosive and runs very, very vertical speed against these guys. And a guy that will be around that I just love is D'Angelo Pons. Kid from Indiana. You're talking he's only 5'9", but if you put him out there, he's a high-level competitor. And he played really, really well in the Big Ten against a lot of big receivers. My concern with him is that he plays really physical. And that's not always the good if you're a cornerback because you risk injury because you're not the biggest guy. He's 5'9", he's 100.
And you draw flags.
Yeah, and he's 5'9".
The NFL is not a league in which they want their cornerbacks playing tremendously physical.
Yeah, correct. And then trading, my last guy, my top 10 is trading Stoops, a kid out of Arizona, another long corner, really good, fluid hips, flashes really high man coverage skills at the next level for somebody who's 6'1". Because usually when you get those tall guys, they're not really good in and out of breaks. Their hips are kind of stiff. Really talented guy. So a lot of talented corners. For me, I think Jared McCoy out of Tennessee, the Terrell kid out of Clemson, and Colton Hood also out of Tennessee. Those are three guys that really fit what the Browns do. And then obviously, I have Chris Johnson at number 2. He can kind of do everything. I really like him. I like him in zone. I like him in man, and it's like his toughness.
When you evaluate these corners, Coach? And as I mentioned, right, that this is not a league where they want the cornerbacks to be real physical with the wide receivers. I always joke, you sneeze on a wide receiver, you're definitely going to get a yellow hanky for it. So when you're evaluating these corners at the college level, what are maybe the top 2 or 3 traits that you're looking for that you feel translates best to the NFL game?
Well, I would say first and foremost, your ability to be explosive in a small area, right? So change in direction. You got to have really good recovery speed, right? Doesn't mean you're maybe a 4-3 guy, but you're 0 to 10 when you get beat. Whether it's man or zone, can you close the gap once you're beat? So I would say, and then obviously your ability to flip your hips. So you got to have really good feet. You got to be able to flip your hips, and there's other things involved, but if you have good feet, you can flip your hips and you can close when you're beat. If you look at, like, sometimes Denzel Ward's great at that, where he'll be beat, he'll recover with that burst. So those are the 3 things that when I'm watching film, there's other things in hand placement and footwork and all that kind of stuff, but can you move your feet, right? Can you close on a guy once he beats you? And are your hips, when you get beat, can you flip your hips? And those are the 3 things I look for. There's other things, but the majority of guys that I learn things from, those are kind of the things. And then, obviously, just the raw athletic ability. Because if you're a raw athlete, they can work with you, obviously your hands. But it's playing corner right now in the NFL is tough because you're not allowed to reroute anybody ever. So, that would be the ability to burst is so big in the NFL and close and those fluid hips. It almost looks like they're not running. Those are the guys who are elite because they're so fluid in what they do.
So I want to look at D'Angelo Pons then for a second. You look at a guy who's 5'9". We talk about you can't reroute guys, can't really use your body once you get more than a couple yards down the field. Is that part of a concern then? Is that a guy who you say likes to play physical, when you get to the NFL level, you really can't as much?
Well, the thing Pons does, he's physical at the catch point. So there's different levels. So he does a really nice job of burst, flipping his hips, and closing. But he's physical at the catch point. He's also very good in the run game. He's a high level. He's got a 43.5-inch vertical leap. So even though he's 5'9", he plays longer than that because of his ability to jump. Obviously, some of those size limitations would just be simply, in the red zone. 180 pounds. Can he take, getting mixed up if he's in the slot, for example, and he has D-gap responsibility in run game and he has to tackle Derrick Henry, you worry about injury. But no, I don't worry about guys who are – the guys you worry about are the guys who are kind of heavy-footed and then they get handsy. D'Angelo Pons is real twitchy, and he can jump, so he'll compete with you at the catch point.
Who make the joke that if these guys could catch, they'd be wide receivers, but – we have seen in recent years with the Browns and the cornerbacks, they're very good at the PBUs, but not very good necessarily at creating the turnovers and taking advantage of those situations. Give me like 1 or 2 guys, do you think, that are realistic for the Browns that I don't know, could catch a football if it goes in the general vicinity of their hands.
Well, Colton Hood and Avion Terrell, I think, are really good because they're both good in man and they have really good ball skills. So when you talk about other things you look for a cornerback, the ability to spatial awareness, you know where you're at on the field, and that comes down to like not getting pass interference. You understand the receiver is going to be, so you have great spatial awareness. You have great ball skills when the ball is in the air. Those guys are doing it. Now, the thing that makes it hard for the Browns, it's got to be that free safety, Daryl, for the interceptions, more than it has to be the corners, because the corners are in man. And when you're in man, your eyes aren't on the quarterback. And it makes it very, very tough sometimes for you to kind of, pick that ball off because your eyes aren't on the delivery or the drop of the quarterback. So, but guys that can really cover and have really good ball skills, obviously Terrell out of Clemson I love for the Browns, and Colton Hood out of Tennessee I think would be the two top guys that can do that.
All right, we got to get out of here in like 30 seconds, but I did want to – Avion Terrell, the brother of A.J. Terrell. I don't know how many years back the evaluation of the draft, but do you remember doing A.J. Terrell at Clemson? Then obviously he spent time in Atlanta as well.
Yeah, it's the same kind of thing, same kind of body type, length. He's you look at the notes, it's twitchy. He's elite foot quickness, a bit hips, ability to close when he's beat. Ball skills at the catch point, outstanding in drills at the, so all those things they do at the combine, they do so much hip work at the combine. He was as good as it get. His older brother was the same way. So the Terrell kid, the thing I like about him in man coverage is that, these guys, Jamar Chase is going to make you like spin. You have to be able to flip your hips and get back and close. And that's what he does best. And same with his brother.
All right, we're going to take a look at the interior offensive line with Coach coming up later in the show, but Andrew Berry with one big comment following the restructure of the contract of Myles Garrett. We get into that in 5 minutes. Jake Volnick, Lance Rise, and Daryl Ryder with you guys on the Fan Offseason Special.
Because at 6 a.m., there's only one place to go. The Ken Carman Show with Anthony Lima. Weekday mornings starting at 6 a.m. 92.3 The Fan. Catch all the latest Browns and NFL news and conversations right here. It's the Fan Offseason Special. Here are your hosts, Jake Volnick, Darrow Ryder, and Coach Lance Reisland. We are Sports Radio 92.3 The Fan.
Second hour of the Fan Offseason Special. Jake Volnick, Lance Reisland, and Darrow Ryder with you guys, catching up on everything to go with the Browns. We talked quarterbacks. We got Coach's cornerback breakdown from the draft. We're going to talk interior offensive lineman a little bit later on in the show, but we still have to get to a big pressing thing out of all of this, which is going to be, well, the Myles Garrett debacle. I think that's the proper way to describe it.
I was in with JP yesterday. I'll be in with him tomorrow. I know this will shock you. I was grumpy about something, but I was really, really grumpy about this whole contract restructure because I had, our sister stations in Philadelphia and Chicago and across the country, right? Every time I'm on one of our sister stations, I always get the, hey, so what's it going to take to get Myles Garrett to be a whatever, Chicago Bear, Philadelphia Eagle, what, right? And I'm just like, well, nothing because he's not going to be traded. Salary cap wise, it doesn't make fiscal sense for the Browns to do that. It also doesn't make sense because he's like the best player the team has had in like 40 years. But my main argument was, well, they just can't do it. Now they can do it. Like, they can do it. Especially this summer. They can do it. And they didn't have to adjust the contract language. They didn't have to adjust the bonus payment structure, right? But they did it. And then Andrew Berry is sitting there in Phoenix miffed that he's just being peppered with questions about trading Myles Garrett. And he's like, I just don't want to waste my breath on him anymore. Well, if you won't, listen, this is what we do in the media. This is Media 101, okay? If we're asking questions and you're not answering our questions to our satisfaction, we're going to keep annoying the you-know-what out of you and asking questions, okay? We're going to keep asking them until we're satisfied with the answers. So, I get it. There's some things he doesn't want to explain and reveal and whatever, but like when you're asked the basic question, like, well, why did you do it if you didn't have to do it and you don't want to answer that, right? And then you're miffed that you're being asked about potentially trading this guy. So that's why I'm grumpy, because now trading Myles Garrett is something that is, at least from a cap management standpoint, and I know Andrew made the argument that, hey, we didn't have to do this. We could have still traded him. And then I would say, well, you probably had to cut half the team too because you had to make the cap room to do it. But like, yeah, I'm just grumpy that we got to go back to the conversation that we have been having, I guess, and all these, bizarre trade proposals that the four-letter network personalities come up with, or the podcasters come up with, or the YouTubers come up with. Like, we're back to square one. And so I'm just grumpy about it.
It's mostly just Mike Tannenbaum. But you talked about Andrew Berry, obviously, and you did talk about that this weekend. Let's take a listen to, we'll have one comment sort of to add on to this, but his response into, hey, are you planning on trading Myles Garrett?
Myles is a career Brown. He is one of the faces of our organization. I think we've been very clear, both past and present, in terms of our feelings on it. So I understand all the questions. I'll be honest, I don't really want to waste a ton more breath on the topic.
Can I follow that up with a direct quote from Andrew Berry?
Direct question for him.
No. This is not a question. And I'm not going to go liar, liar, pants on fire, but I'm going to go liar, liar, pants on fire. Baker Mayfield is our quarterback. That was said during the 2022 offseason before they pursued Deshaun Watson. Baker Mayfield is our quarterback. I'm just saying, again, not accusing Andrew Berry of lying, but I'm accusing Andrew Berry of lying. I think there is a real possibility that this can happen. I know what the organization... What? You were expecting them to say, yeah, he's on the trade block. He's asked for a trade or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
No. You can't. You have a mutiny on your hands. You're trying to sell, suites and tickets and all that kind of stuff to the new beautiful dome in Brook Park and all that, right? Which is going to be tough if you do ultimately trade Myles here this fall. But Andrew Berry has been caught misleading. I think that's the word to use. And I will acknowledge that is part of his job as a GM. He misled us last year about Travis Hunter, right? Mm-hmm. He misled us about the Baker Mayfield situation. He's misled us about a lot of things. Now, to be fair to Andrew, the last time the trade Myles Garrett thing came up, he said, we're not trading Myles Garrett. Instead, we're going to give him $40 million a year. Okay? I don't know that there is another pay raise coming Myles Garrett's way this time around, though. I am not going to sit here and completely dismiss the idea of the Browns trading Myles Garrett because in my gut, I do believe it's a possibility, whether that happens this summer or it happens next summer, because Myles wants to win. And I talked a lot about this on my Sunday show with Nick Pannone. I pulled the clip. I pulled two clips, I should say. I sandwiched them together. It was heading into the regular season finale. And Myles was asked, hey, about the state of affairs and his thoughts on that. And he's like, listen, I just want to be successful. I don't care what that looks like. I just want to be successful. And then the follow-up was, well, Kevin might get fired, blah, 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 whatever. They might, have to, rebuild or retool. I'm not interested in rebuilding. I'm not interested in retooling. I'm not interested in anything. The only thing I'm interested in is winning. And as long as this organization is committed to that and not doing the tanking and the rebuilding and all that other stuff, okay, because I'm fed up with losing, we're good. And I'm just wondering, following the hire of Todd Monken, looking at what the quarterback room is right now, looking at the fact that we're sitting here on March 31st on a Tuesday night, there's nothing of substance that has been done to improve an offense that averaged less than 17 points per game. Okay? If I'm Myles Garrett right now, I'm not a happy camper. I'm just keeping it real. I
think they have improved their offensive line. Yet to be seen.
No. I'm talking about though. Like I with all due respect to the offensive line, mm-hmm. Okay, they don't score points. I understand they make it able to score points, but I vehemently disagree with Andrew Berry that his wide receiver room is as good as he believes it to be. Okay, his wide receiver room is trash. Okay, and it's led by somebody who has a bipolar attitude. When things are good, he's good. When things are bad, it's bad. And you can't have that in your locker room, okay? Now it's good. I love the fact that Jerry Jeudy's hanging out with Shador and work with him on the side and all that. That's great, okay? But materially, this offense is not better yet. I know the draft is coming up. That's why I stress yet. So if I'm Myles Garrett right now, I look at everything that's been done this offseason. I'm not all that impressed. And that just isn't about them not keeping Jim Schwartz, who he vouched for, because I'm not a fan of – I don't care if the players like the coach, okay? I really don't. The last time the Browns hired a coach that the Browns players liked, starting with the starting quarterback, was Freddie Kitchens, okay? And that was a train wreck of a season. So I don't care if the players like the coach. That's why I don't care if the players didn't like Kevin Stefanski. I really don't. You're there to win football games. You're there to do your assignment. You're not there to go have beers down at the tavern after practice, okay? Or have dinner and all that. I mean, those make for warm and fuzzy stories. Oh, we love our coach. But no, I don't care if you like your coach or not. But yeah, I am very curious, though, right now as to what Myles Garrett's mindset is.
I thought it was really interesting because we've talked about kind of, you brought up the Baker Mayfield comments, which Baker Mayfield is our quarterback. Nothing Andrew Berry said there was a deceptive lie. At that point in time, Baker Mayfield was their quarterback. That is a statement of fact until he wasn't. Deshaun was brought here.
Well, it's a statement of fact. Myles Garrett is a career Brown. Yes, to this point in his career, he is a career Cleveland Brown. From 2017, when he was selected first overall, to March 31st, 2026, he is a career Cleveland Brown. That, too, my friend, is an accurate statement, and I smite you for it.
But the other thing, we've had Andrew Berry talk about like the Cleveland to Canton line and wanting to keep him here and the desire to keep him here. The messaging through in which he talks about that is like, hey, our messaging, we thought we made it clear before and we're making it clear as we stand here right now. The message has been, we don't want Myles to go anywhere and we want Myles to be here. Like he has been a continuous building block. Now, the restructure doesn't make any sense. So again, I'm with you. Like, I'm not ruling that off and just saying, that's not a possibility. Like, we can just throw that away. He's a Brown for life, and we can just move on.
2 weeks ago, I could rule it out, but now that they've done what they've done, I can't rule it out anymore.
Think about if you want to be a good football organization. Here's what you've heard in the last 10 days. For me, as a football coach, it makes me absolutely insane because you guys are spot on. We're trying to build an organization, so the thought is now we can trade our best player, arguably the best player in the league, and we want to trade down, so we're not going to take a game changer. We're going to take a guy who is going to fill a need, and we need that need. Like, that makes absolutely no sense to me, right? Like, we're trying to build an organization. We're going to get rid of our best guy, and we're going to trade down because we want to fill a need. I just don't. It doesn't seem like we're not stacking anything, building towards the future.
But they're not good enough to be able to take the luxury pick there at 6, right? Because they have so many holes, and like this has always been my frustration with this organization. Aside from the product that they put on the field on a regular basis, is they have never gotten themselves to a point where they can do what the Eagles, the Packers, the Patriots, these teams that are constant winners, where they're recycling the rosters. Even when you have those, to your point, Coach, about the elite players, like when the elite player goes to free agency and you don't have the cap space, you got to make a business decision, right? You can afford to lose that guy because you have another guy that's coming up that you either drafted, developed, traded for, whatever, can slide right in. The Browns, first of all, they've never been able to field a successful complete roster, and they've never gotten to a point where they could draft and develop and continue that cycle of replacing the players and that's what so frustrated me about the results of the 1-31 and 4-44. The only thing fans got out of all that pain and misery is one playoff win. You did get 2 playoff appearances out of it, but one playoff win, and really 2 core pieces of that whole thing are left standing, and that is Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward. David Njoku's gone. Nick Chubb is gone. Baker Mayfield is gone, right? All the Jabril Peppers, who was a first-round pick, he's gone, right? Like, all those pieces and parts that you brought in from that rebuild, they're gone. They are now no longer part of your organization. Again, I understand that is kind of part of how the business of the NFL goes, but they've never been able to get on this cycle of building a program and then continuing to evolve that program with young, fresh talent. Meanwhile, teams like the Eagles, who were one of the younger teams, to Andrew Berry's point earlier this offseason about youth doesn't mean you stink, but yeah, the Eagles have a program now. That's the thing. The Packers, they have a program. The Patriots have even with the Patriots changing coaches a couple times since Bill Belichick, they have a program. They have a type of player that they draft. The Steelers, goodness gracious, they're in football purgatory right now. They can't take the hint that they need to blow it up. But hey, they're good enough to win 10 games every year and lose in the first round of the playoffs. They have a system. They have types of players. The Browns have never gotten there, and we sit there and wonder why they win 3 to 5 games every season.
So I like that you bring up the Packers. I'm going to bring up another team here. Is kind of a rebuttal to this, and we're going to do it in about 5 minutes, right? The idea that you trade Myles, you move off your best piece, coach adding in the trade down from 6. Not saying that I like it, but there are teams that kind of follow this model and also don't end up all that bad. Again, we're going to bring them up here in 5 minutes. It's Jake Volnick, Lance Rice, and Darryl Ryder, all with you guys on the Fan Offseason Special.
Listen to 92.3 The Fan on the Odyssey, iHeartRadio, and TuneIn app. Catch all the latest Browns and NFL news and conversations right here. It's the Fan Offseason Special. Here are your hosts, Jake Volnick, Darrow Ryder, and Coach Lance Reisland. We are Sports Radio 92.3 The Fan.
Coming up here at 8:40, we're going to get to Coach Riz's interior offensive lineman breakdown. You get guards and centers, something probably the Browns need about 30 of just to be safe.
I mean, they brought in a couple of guys, and we're going to have debates over who, guys are going to play guard or center or, whatever. But, yeah, they could use a little interior depth there.
Yeah, they need some bodies, for sure, and some guys who can move some people, for sure.
That's the good news. The bad news is Andrew Berry's making the picks, but I digress.
Listen, they play as many interior offensive linemen here about as they do as quarterbacks, so that tells me I need more. We're going to get to that coming up at about 8:40, but we are talking a little bit of Myles Garrett, right? And we ended off last segment kind of talking about, Coach, obviously you're very against the idea of trade Myles Garrett, trade down to 6. That combination, I mean, baffles you. I see you shake your head every time I bring it up.
It makes me sick to my stomach thinking about it as a coach.
Listen, if you and I realize you cannot do this. I preface this by I know there's no such thing as a guarantee, and especially with the Cleveland Browns, other than maybe them losing double-digit games every year. But if you could guarantee me that, like, the Browns get their franchise quarterback in 2027 and he's here for 12 years and plays at a high level and he's able to turn the franchise competitive, I would trade Myles Garrett in the blink of an eye to do that. But again, there's no guarantee that's going to happen. So you want me to trade the best player with all due respect to Joe Thomas, right? I know he's in the Hall of Fame. Myles is going to be in the Hall of Fame too, but like the best player in generations, you're going to trade that dude for what I call the lottery ticket, right? You get the lottery ticket to maybe you win. You're afraid. I can't get on board with that. And if they do trade Myles, it is it's going to be an epic day here at 92.3 The Fan, and because I can hear it now. But also too, if they trade him, I do understand it. They haven't won with him, and that's his frustration. That's my frustration, right? That even when you get great players, you get blue chip talent. I've argued this for years. Like, well, the Browns just don't have blue chip talent. What are you expecting, right? Now they have it. Denzel Ward, Myles Garrett, Carson Schlesinger, right? You got blue chip talent on one side of the ball. You have zero blue chip talent. Maybe Harold Fannin Jr. I think he has the potential to be blue chip. Quinshawn, if he is able to like stay healthy consistently, I should say, in his career, maybe he can be a blue chipper. But outside of that, you have no blue chip talent on your offense right now. And this is what I've always lamented about this franchise is when they do get blue chip talent, they like Josh Cribbs. Think about this. Josh Cribbs was like arguably their best football player for like a 5-year stretch. Okay? Josh Cribbs. And again, no disrespect to Josh Cribbs. He's a special teamer. Kick returner, punt returner, gunner, and wide receiver. Okay?
The wide receiver numbers were not gaudy.
Right. But like think about it. Joe Thomas was the best player on your team for years and years and years. He was the only blue chip player you had, right? And again, no disrespect to Joe, but he's left tackle. Joe Hayden gave you a glimpse for a little bit, but DeQuell Jackson a glimpse for a little bit, T.J. Ward a little bit, right? So they've had blue chip talent, but they've never been able to assemble it, and this is the closest that they've come to assembling it, right? In any way, shape, or form. But it's all on one side of the ball, and they're doing what they've done for the bulk of the last 3 decades, and that is they're coming off a 3 and now a 5-win season. They're blue chip talent that they do have, and it's not those players' fault. Okay, it's just the circumstance, and they're still not able. It's frustrating, and that's I think why Myles has been so frustrated about everything because he knows he's 30 years old. Like, he's only got so much time where he's in this sweet spot of his career to take advantage of it. And he's played in 3 playoff games.
But so I think there were 2 really good examples that are kind of, listen, this isn't what I believe, but these are 2 names that popped in my head. Darryl said the Packers, who obviously have added a lot of talent to the defense. You look on the offensive side of the ball, sure. Josh Jacobs is a good running back. He's hurt a decent amount of the time. Nobody's crowning Jordan Love as elite. Nobody's crowning a wide receiver or tight end in that offensive elite. And that offensive line went through struggles of their own last year.
Mm-hmm.
I also take a look at a team like the Broncos. Now, they have some really nice players on defense. I mean, you have a defensive player of the year, perennial candidate, like Nick Medino is really good. Look on the offense side of the ball. Who's a blue chipper on the offense side of the ball from the Broncos right now? Like, Cortland Sutton's a nice player. Bo Nix, I don't think anybody's putting as a blue chipper. That offense was really good last year. That team went to an AFC championship last year, and a lot of it built on, I mean, sure, the defense was good. The offense was doing more than their part. So I do think that there are multiple models, though, around the NFL. It's like, it's great. You win with players, but there are teams out here that you look around the rest of the NFL and you go, they don't have a prime Derrick Henry or a Christian McCaffrey or any of these guys, but they still make it work because both of those teams, I would argue, a great dispersion of talent, right? Like, they have a lot of, I don't want to say middle of the road, but like that step above middle of the road type guys, and they just have it across their offense, and that's good enough. And I do think when you talk about trading Myles Garrett, trading back in the draft, acquiring more picks, you talk about a team that gets better across the board, then you can look for the blue chippers. And if you're drafting high in the draft, you can go get those guys. Or maybe you open up money with a lot of young players on your team to trade for those guys. Again, not necessarily what I believe, but I do think there is a model out there for teams that are playoff teams that are successful doing that right now.
Well, and there's something to be said about the winning atmosphere and kind of the culture, right? The way they practice, the way they carry themselves, how they practice, and that comes down to believing you can win every game, right? So instead of always planning to get draft capital and all the words that I've heard over the last couple weeks, what do we got to do to win week one? Because everything else will kind of take care of itself if you could ever get to that point. Now, that's what when you talk about Denver, you talk about Green Bay, it's kind of that culture they have, and culture is never what you say, it's what you do. And these teams like the Steelers, as much as we always say, and I agree, like they're kind of in that like we're going to win 9 or 10 games, they're not looking at it like that. Winning organizations, they're looking at, all right, we win 10 every year. We know we can do that. We just got to get 1 or 2 more guys, right? And even if that's not true, that's how those organizations think. And that's where the Browns aren't. They're just not, there's not that kind of that winning mentality. And that's why when the stuff has come out about Deshaun and Shador and all these guys, I kind of get excited because I'm like, maybe they're thinking a little bit differently, right? Maybe Monken is, at 60 years old, you got to hope Monken comes in is not anything puppet-wise, right? He has, this is what I want to do, how I want to do it, and hopefully they give him a little bit of freedom to do that. But once again, I'm with you on it goes to things you're talking about are things we do at all levels of football. If you don't have elite guys, then you got to play elite together, right? Because if I'm going to double team a 3 technique I'm not as good at, but my buddy and I are, the 3 techniques 300, we're both 200. If we work together, we're 400, right? I know it's a cliche, but that's kind of what a lot of teams do is they play so well as a unit and they trust each other and they play together on defense and gap integrity, all those things we talk about. But that's chemistry, and that happens over time.
Coach, I'll just be happy if they can line up right and if they can run motion correctly. Well, like for me, that would be a quantum leap for the Cleveland Browns offensively. Drove me nuts last year, right? They couldn't even line up. Like that's the most basic thing, and they couldn't even do that.
Well, you'd hope with Todd Bunkin. That problem is with Kevin, it was never part of his thing. And when we all, as coaches, when we try to do things that we don't know, it looks really cool, and it looks cool on paper, and it looks good when there are other defenses in playing, right? You're on air, you're running motion, looks great. But Todd Bunkin, that's kind of who he is. So hopefully, the McVays, the Munkins, these innovative guys, that's part of what they do. So hopefully, that's another thing that can happen with if you're not as talented. You got to window dress and create good angles for your offensive linemen and create space for your best players and things like that. Hopefully that's what the Browns are moving to.
So I think the trade Myles Garrett conversation is interesting in a multitude of ways. And again, like I'm going to play devil's advocate here. I'm in no way going to advocate for them to trade Myles. He's a generational player, and I want him to be here under no other circumstance. Myles is here. That should be step number 1. But if I'm going to sit here and play devil's advocate, like Daryl, you talked about where do they have blue chippers? It's all on the defense side of the ball. Like, look around the NFL at the greatest teams. They have great defenses and great but when you talk about money allocation and you talk about just talent allocation, the Browns are in the farthest extreme probably of any team right now where, hey, our defense is so good. Like, we're talking about a top 5 defense, top 10 defense every single year, no questions asked. And we're talking about a bottom tier offense. Like, at some point you talk about guys that need to get paid, where the talent is coming from, how you address that talent. We just watched the Jets trade away basically their entire defense because they realized, wow, we're really good on defense, and we really stink on offense.
Yeah.
Like, You can't survive that way in a salary cap league. It can't happen. You can't pay out all that money, put so much talent on one side of the ball and expect the other side not to struggle either.
But here's the thing, about the Jets and the narrative that when they traded Sauce Gardner and Quinnen Williams and whatnot, it was, hey, look, the Jets traded the last group of guys that they used their top draft picks on for more future, what they feel will be top draft picks, right? You traded your best talent in the hopes that you're going to acquire your best talent, right? It doesn't compute, but to what you're saying, yeah, it almost is like you have to shift your philosophy and you have to get that blue chip talent on the offensive side of the ball. Like when you're talking roster construction, right? Obviously, it starts with franchise quarterback. Then you want to have your left tackle, one guard, one top tier guard to pair on your offensive line, whether that's the right guard or the left guard, right? You need a number one wide receiver, and you need a go-to tight end, and then you need a blocking tight end. On the defensive side, you need your top pass rusher. You need an interior, can collapse the pocket defensive lineman. From my standpoint, I'm glad the Browns finally have one now. For me, you need an elite linebacker, okay? And then you need a shutdown corner. Like, to me, those are the cornerstones of, like, your roster-building process. Notice I didn't say anything about running back. Not that running back isn't important, but you've got a 5-to-1 ratio getting a first down by throwing a football without even completing the pass, okay? It's like a 5-to-1 ratio to get that first down. And so when I look at the Browns, they have the shutdown corner. They have the elite linebacker. They have the elite pass rusher. They've got a good interior defensive line. You've got a number one tight end, in my view, in Harold Fannin Jr. And then the music stops. You have all these other... You're missing so many cornerstones, including the most important. And I know we've talked about it for 30 years. We got a 50-game break with Baker Mayfield there for a while because he at least showed up to play, and occasionally he played well, right? But like they're missing so many cornerstones in their roster building process right now, and by the time they fill in those cornerstones, your other cornerstones
are
on their way out or too old. That's the problem. And so I don't know what the answer is to rectify that. I really don't. But that's honestly where they're at right now.
Well, I'll say this. The Browns hiring Todd Monken gives this offense the best chance they've had in a while. Why? Because it's not system-based. It's players-based. So if you talk about, like, I've been pushing for Jeremiah Love, and people are like, everything Darryl was saying, it's not a running back. Well, I don't consider Jeremiah Love. I consider him a touch guy. And when you have a touch guy in a Monken offense, even though you don't have all the pieces, so in a system offense, all the pieces, right, all the spokes on the wheel have to be good in Kevin Stefanski's offense. When they are, it's pretty good. When you're in Monken's offense, he's got Fannin, he's got Junkins. Maybe he gets a cut other guys. Maybe he can maximize, even though he doesn't have a tremendous skill set, he can maximize said Tillman in a couple ways. He can create touches for Isaiah Bond. Not saying they'll be elite, but at least, when you talk about Jerry Jeudy, he understands getting Jerry Jeudy.
Make something of what he has.
Yes, and that's what happens when you're at least in a system-based offense. Said Tillman's running over routes or a 7 route. He's a guy, a big receiver who has a very limited skill set. We'll use it. If it's limited, there's still something that got him to the NFL. That's where you hope and Todd Monken can kind of close this gap a little bit if they can get a couple players in the draft moving forward, because we know the defense is going to be good.
All right, I'm sure the Miles conversation is far from dead, and if we're not going to be talking about it next week, somebody will be talking about it come June when we talk about a little bit farther into draft being done and some guarantees being promised and all of that, so that conversation will come back up. There's no avoiding it. But we are going to talk a little bit of draft coming up here in 5 minutes because we have Coach's interior offensive lineman breakdown, something I would say you can almost draft not enough of, especially if you're in Cleveland. Again, that's coming your way in 5 minutes. It's Jake Volnick, Lance Reisland, Darryl Ryder, all with you guys on the Fan Offseason Special.
92.3 The Fan has the most local sports talk in town. don't trust anybody with your Cavs coverage unless they have sports in their name. We are Sports Radio 92.3 The Fan. Catch all the latest Browns and NFL news and conversations right here. It's the Fan Offseason Special. Here are your hosts, Jake Volnick, Darrow Ryder, and Coach Lance Reisland. We are Sports Radio 92.3 The Fan.
Final segment of the Fan Offseason Special with you guys here on this Tuesday. Overtime with myself, taking you guys from 9 to 11. And, of course, we'll be back next Tuesday talking plenty of draft and plenty of whatever other conversations spawn out of the air.
Should we come up with Myles Garrett trade scenarios for next week's show?
No.
They'll give us something else. There'll be something else for us to talk about.
Maybe somebody will jump on and give what should be the starting of that conversation anyway, which is you can start with 3 first-round picks. Okay, anything else beyond that, you might as well just hang up the phone and not even call back.
Yeah, because those first-round picks are going to be in the 25 to 32 range.
Yep, probably. I mean, if anybody that Myles waves the claws for, certainly not wrong, because that man wants to win. Those are the teams that are winning.
He will not approve a trade to the Arizona Cardinals. I'm just throwing that out there.
Believe it or not. No, but we do have to get through this to the end of it. Again, 2 positions every single week except for 1, because that's how this plays out, which will be farther down the line. But we have another breakdown.
Which quarterback is getting its own spotlight? I wonder. You'll have to stay tuned.
Yeah, you're just going to have to wait and see. You'll never know. But right now, we're going to get into Coach Riz's interior offensive line breakdown. Obviously, your guards and your centers. Again, I make the joke. You really can't have too many of them, but that's also, I feel like a pretty common viewpoint across the NFL. Obviously, there is a number on it. There's a cap. You're not going to fill out 50 guys down here, but the Browns do still need a lot of work done in this room. Like, hey, Coach, if I'm not mistaken, you just put something out not too long ago on Zach Zinner. He's kind of floating around. He's one of the guys that we haven't seen a ton out of, but it's also one of your only guys that you look up and go, oh, we have guard depth.
Well, I look at Zach Zinner, and for me, watching him breaking down his film, I thought he was a steal because he was outstanding. He has never recovered from the injury in the Ohio State game. His movement skills, it's not about 1-2. It's not about effort. He's always out there. He's always working real hard. I just don't see the lateral movement that I saw at Michigan. I don't see the burst that I saw at Michigan. I think that leg injury for him, maybe I'm wrong, but he's not moving like he did when they drafted him. And that's what's really hurt him because he's a big, strong guy, and he can pull. He gets to the second level. He pass protects very well. He's not moving very well right now.
Just not the same player after that injury.
Just wasn't, yeah.
And it's unfortunate, but I mean that is part of life in the big city when you're talking about those type of things. I love making this joke. I can't wait to hear Coach's top OGs because the Browns need a few OGs.
Little OGs
up front in the trenches, right?
Absolutely.
They absolutely do. Now, this also is going to be an interesting conversation because I think it's actually one of the underrated positions for the Browns in the draft because we talk so much left tackle, and we've identified.
That's the big gaping hole they have.
Right, but if you can't land your left tackle, the draft plays out the way the draft plays out. If you don't take one at 6, you leave the door open that there's not one there for you to draft in the first round. Then we're talking about, hey, is DeJuan Jones at left tackle? Do you have to move Elton Jenkins? And if you move Elton Jenkins, we're talking about you have a gap right now. If Joe Bitonio's not back, sitting on your offensive line, I need to fill in an offensive guard that is going to be a starter for me. Or even, do I trust who I have at center right now? Like, am I good there? Do I need to go find a guy? Or do I need to find the guy to replace the guy later down the line? So, like, you need help on the interior, and it might not just be the depth that we're talking about. You might need a guy who, if he doesn't have to start this year, he's going to have to start at some point in the future. So I think these are all interesting. But as we kind of look at the 3 positions that are included in this, Coach, where is the strength? Where is the weakness? And what are you really finding between if you're drafting a guy on, we'll probably say day 1 to day 2 compared to if we're going to get a guy on day 3?
Well, I'll say this. I would say there's not a lot of guys that would maybe Oliavega Owana, Penn State. He's the one guy, probably a first rounder. There's other guys that might slide. Obviously he's the best guard. He's the best guard. He's heavy-handed. He moves well. He's 6'4". He's 330. He's kind of that mauler type guy. He does lumber a little bit, but that's why he's inside. Then if you talk the best center, without question, in my opinion, is Jake Slaughter, kid out of Florida, 6'4", 305. He's a center brain. And what I mean by that, he is a college lineman that sets protection. He does it at a high level. He IDs the fronts. He's really good in the gap scheme. He's really good in the zone scheme, both inside and outside zone. He can also pull. And that's one of the things, even at the college level, those centers that can pull allow you to pull the guy that gives you the best angles and pulls the guy that doesn't put other people in bad positions. And that's really big for a center. The other center that's really good is Connor Lew, the kid out of Auburn. Same kind of guy. A hard-nosed kid, not super fast, really steady in everything he does. Another guy who calls fronts, things like that. So those are the two best centers. The other now guards that will be available, I think on day 2 and day 3. One would be Jennings Dunker, and he's much more. Even though he has the best, the best mullet in the draft, there's something to be said about him. And Logan Jones is another one of my guy. Even though Logan Jones played tackle, he'll be a center or a guard. Something to be said about those Iowa offensive linemen. They are well schooled in what they do. Their footwork is outstanding, so the learning curve is not quite as much for them. Jennings Dunker is outstanding at everything he does at a guard.
Coach, let me ask you a question on him, because I've heard people that evaluate the draft kind of go with the make sure that you're studying the player and not the helmet type of mindset, right? Like, make sure we're talking wide receivers. Sure, Ohio State produces great wide receivers, but you still have to get the player. But you talk about Iowa offensive linemen who have been relatively successful in the NFL and obviously at the college level. How much of that can you attribute to you went to Iowa? Not necessarily you're going to be a great guy on the offensive line, but it adds that extra boost.
Well, you have to have that. It's like Carnell Tate or these Ohio State receivers. Carnell Tate's success has nothing to do with JSN or anybody else. But what it does, how he's been coached. He knows the full route tree. He knows how to get open. Versus man and zone, and he's played with other elite guys. So when you talk about Iowa guys, for me, especially zone, they understand how to block zone. And when you're blocking zone, you don't know who's coming off the double team like you do in gap scheme. You don't really know who's going to, it depends on what the linebackers do. And that takes a lot of practice with your footwork, with your hands. We used to say, 4 eyes, 4 feet. You got to know what you're doing. So, no, it still comes down to him. It still comes down to Logan Jones. But these are guys who are very talented. And the one thing you can get from an Iowa lineman is they're extremely tough. And Iowa does a great job of taking these guys who are tight end type bodies and turning them into linemen. And what that does, that gives you light feet. That gives you the ability to play like a tight end at 300 pounds. And they do a really nice job of that. Ferentz has always done a great job with that.
With George Warhop, taking over the offensive line. And we still don't even know what Todd Monken's offense is actually going to look like. We saw, them build an offensive line around guys that excel in the pin and pull, the pin and pull schemes, right? And, second and third level with the pancake blocking down the field and whatnot. Then they got away from it for a little bit, and then they went back to it. But it just didn't seem like it was the same going back to it. When you're like looking at these guys and, looking at who the Browns have brought in this offseason, how do you weigh, I guess, who will actually fit here versus like, Jake's talking about whether it's a kid from Iowa or, a guy that's ranked X position in that group, whether he's a guard or a center. Like, how are you fitting the pieces and the parts together when you're, looking at a couple of these kids?
Well, Monken's offense, along with Warhop, it's always been about like finding the matchups, maximizing your players. But, a lot of people think of receivers and running backs, quarterbacks, tight ends. It also, for Monken's offense, it also works for the offensive linemen. So the offensive linemen have to be very versatile in what they do. Again, I'll go back to when the Ravens played the Browns. Because the Browns defensive linemen get upfield, a ton of traps, a ton of counters, where they're going to allow the Browns defense to get upfield, and then they're going to trap them. Then they face a team like the Patriots who play along the line of scrimmage, and you're going to see a lot more zone where there's big double teams because they're not penetrating. So to play in Monken's offense, to play for Warhop, you got to be able to run all that stuff, which tells you got to be really smart. You got to have really good feet. And you got to understand that whatever you're going to base what you do, depending on what the defense does and the weak players they have, because he's going to attack weak players. He made the Browns safeties and linebackers cover. He allowed, the defensive line to get a field and trap them. So there's some things that I would say the big thing in this offense for the guards is they have to be able to run for one thing, but they have got to be versatile in both gap and zone schemes, because they're going to base it, just like with the pass game and the run game, they're going to base it on who they see. That's part of this whole Sean McVay, all these guys who are, Shanahan. It's week to week, and it really is because they're going to take advantage of what the defenses do poorly.
What other guys do you have on that list that you really like?
Probably the most physical guy in the draft is Chase Bisontis. He's a Texas A&M guard, 6'5", 315. He's a really heavy-handed, kind of a nasty guy when you watch him play. Not the most lateral guy. He's not great in pass protection, but you talk about a guy who gets his hands on you. Once again, this is a guy that everybody's dropped out. Sam Heck, he's a center out of Kansas State. Everybody has dropped off him because his combine, and there was a bunch of stuff I don't care. Right, there's one of those guys, I just don't care what the measurements say. Watch the film. So the measurements say he can't do this, and he's, watch the film. He's a nasty guy, Kansas State, really good football player. Like him. One of the most guys, probably the most upside I've seen this year is Emmanuel Pregnon, kid from Oregon. He's 6'5", he's 318, but you're talking like off the bus first guy, right? This is a guy that doesn't have much fat on him. He looks the part. He can move. He's the kind of guy you get into late day 2, day 3, you're like, this is the guy we might have to take a chance on because his physical traits are just – he's played really well too, but his physical traits are through the roof. And then last two I have is Keelan Rutledge out of Georgia Tech, another guy who's just a mauler, does everything pretty well, but his claim to fame would be I'm going to line up, and if you're a 3 technique, I'm going to knock you. I'm going to vertically displace you backwards. And then a true road grader who is a project with great athleticism – I'm kind of alone in my thoughts on him is DJ Campbell, a guard from Texas. I just love the way he plays, and I love his athleticism. He also makes a bunch of mistakes. He seems like he's a little bit like new to some things, but boy, what a great athlete and just a monster of a guy. But I would say if the Browns realistically, Logan Jones, Chase Bisontis, Connor Lew, Jake Slaughter can play guard and center. Jennings Dunker. There's a lot of guys on day 2 and 3 that can really improve the interior of this line. I think they'd have to do something for Vega if they get him, because I think he'll be available. He's only going to be available on that day 1.
All right, we got a lot of things to look at interior offensive line-wise. As we get to next week, we're going to be talking maybe a little bit more heavily on the defensive side of the ball. A lot to break down on that side, but we're about out of time, so big thanks to both of you. Always a blast, always fun doing it. Thought we had a really nice show. So
Time flies when you're having fun.
Absolutely.
Absolutely does. We'll be back next week. We'll be talking everything all over again, probably a little bit more draft focus than this week, obviously with the league meetings, but we'll have plenty of conversations to have. In the meantime, from 9 to 11, it's going to be overtime with myself, here on the Fan Offseason Special. For Lance Reisland, for Daryl Ryder, we'll see you next week. We wish you a great rest of your week. Overtime coming up here in about 5 minutes. It has been the Fan Offseason Special right here on 92.3 The Fan.